What's up, guys? Matt here with a review for Pacific Rim Uprising, the sequel to the 2013 film directed by Guillermo del Toro. This time around, though, the film is helmed by Stephen S. DeKnight, and John Boyega stars as Jaeger Pentecost, the son of Stacker Pentecost from the first film. This one takes place 10 years after the first film, and this time around, it's not just Jaegers versus Kaiju, it's also Jaegers versus Jaegers, and they also mix it up a bit. I don't want to go into too much detail because they don't really reveal a lot in the trailers, but the basic premise is the same as the first one. Big-ass robots versus big-ass monsters. If that's your thing, just go ahead and see it. I do want to start by saying I'm not a huge fan of the first film. I liked it for what it set out to do, and it did that well. It was meant to be a fun and entertaining film about robots fighting monsters. But the rest of it just seemed like an amalgamation of cliches from robot movies and monster movies and typical 80s action movies. And I didn't really feel like it was very well structured that time around. This time, there are some similarities to the first film. There are a number of differences. Some of the similarities I feel are just things in the first film that were already broken that this time around they didn't really feel like fixing. But some of the things I actually feel like this time around they actually did better. One of the things I really liked about this movie was John Boyega as the main character. He's a great actor, he's very charismatic, and I love hearing him in his natural English accent. They establish him as, again, a very cliche kind of action character. He had potential, but then he gave up on it, and he, lives his life by stealing things, and that's how he gets by. And he meets Amara, played by Kaylee Spaney, by stealing from a Jaeger junkyard. And the relationship between Boyega and Spaney's characters are the exact same, essentially, as those of Charlie Hunnam and Rinko Kikuchi, I hope I said that right, from the first film. So, and there's really not much I can say about their characters, so basically, just going off of, their performances and what they bring to the roles, I'd say that I honestly think that Boyega and Spaney do a better job in this one than Hunnam or Kikuchi did in the first film. Kikuchi does reprise a role for this film, but she's not in it for very long. Charlie Day and Bern Gorman, they reprise their roles, and everyone does fine. Everyone does a good job with their roles. One character I wanted to bring up, Scott Eastwood. He plays a character named Nate. He's also in the Jaeger program. He reminded me of a character from the first film, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember when Hunnam first shows up, there's this character there who was an absolute stereotypical dick. And there was absolutely no reason for him to be acting the way he did towards Hunnam's character. He was literally just there to be a dick. In this film, Eastwood, he has a similar character, or he has a similar animosity towards Boyega. But they establish that they have a history together, and that there's some animosity between them that that never got resolved. And even though, granted, their relationship was never, or their history was never really fleshed out, it was never really explained, at least it made sense why Eastwood was hostile towards Boyega. There are also a number of young cadets that are in the film, and they each have their respective roles. Their respective characters as well. They all have kind of their respective arcs throughout the film. And that brings me to another aspect of this film, which has both positive and negative effects. Like I said before, I don't really feel like the first one was structured very well. This time around, I think the opposite. I think they did a better job of putting it together, like they really knew what they were going for. But with that being said, that doesn't mean I don't think it's cluttered. There's a lot going on in this movie. The main story in and of itself has a number of issues in terms of just trying to simplify it. It really overcomplicates things. And at the same time, every character in this movie, from Jaeger Pentecost, Amara, Nate, its love interest, who really doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose in this movie. This other character I didn't go into, Shao. All the cadets, every character in this film has some type of character arc. And when you throw all of that into an hour and 50-minute movie, it does not give them enough time to really flesh everything out. So much of the movie really feels rushed. And there seems to be a discontinuity with timing. Like, you really can't tell how much time passes in this movie. Like, for instance, one character could be in one location, and then they leave, and 1 minute later, they're in a completely different location. A few minutes go by, they leave, and then they're in a completely different location from that. It's really hard to tell how much time passes in this movie. And then it has other issues, plot holes, things that don't make sense. But you know what? So did the first film. One thing I think was also improved upon the first film were the action sequences. I was never bored during this film. I was always entertained. Part of that had to do with the actors. I always enjoyed watching them on screen. But a big part of it were the action sequences. The battle sequences, I never really felt like I was watching the same one over and over again, because I wasn't. That was a big problem I had with the first one. This time around, each of the fights seemed distinct. They were more creative. The end fight sequence, where the multiple kaiju come together to form one big kaiju, I knew it was coming, and yet the build-up to it was really well done. And the fight itself, I really enjoyed. So overall, Pacific Rim Uprising carries with it a lot of the same problems that the first one had. It's got a lot of cliches, a lot of corny one-liners, it's got a lot of plot holes, and it has some continuity errors. What did happen to Raleigh Beckett? And where was Ron Perlman? Nevertheless, the action sequences were exciting and enjoyable, the characters were likable, and I felt like the structure was held up much better this time around. So overall, I'm going to give the film a 7 out of 10. I'm glad I went to see it, and I would recommend it to anybody. And that's what I got. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.